This is Brian with screenfiles.com and review. And what I'm looking at today is 2018's The Nun, directed by Corin. Recently I rewatched The Nun and it brought a question to mind. Namely, can you hold something in your mouth like, I don't know, the blood of Christ while underwater? And you might respond, sure, why not? Okay, now take that same scenario, but have air bubbles escaping from your mouth while you're underwater, which implies that you can't hold a liquid in your mouth. Why? Because air is escaping from your mouth. And if you can't hold air in your mouth, how are you holding a liquid in your mouth? The scenario I just described happens at the end of the movie when the nun is defeated by Sister Irene. I mention this because this type of thing happens a lot in this movie, which is to say when the characters, and I use that word charitably because they're not really characters, they're more outlines. And it's left to the actors, because the script does them no favors, to give these characters life, personality, and dimension. And it doesn't really work all that well. This tendency of the nun to give people abilities that they don't have typically or that make no sense is not at all unusual for this movie. And it is frustrating to watch. Now keep in mind, I'm not saying it's unwatchable or bad. And in fact, if you haven't seen many horror movies, The Nun is not a bad first horror movie because it's very cliched and it does things that cliched horror movies tend to do a lot. But if you've seen more than a few, as I have, and I assume many of you have as well, you're not going to particularly like this movie. Another example, there's a scene where Sister Irene, Father Burke, and Frenchie first arrive at the Abbey. And under the spot where the nun hung herself, mild spoiler, there's a pool of blood. And this pool of blood never seems to dry up. There's no rain or anything which would have wiped it away, but it always seems fresh. Now, I can't speak for you, but if I saw that, I would wonder what the fuck is happening. That makes no sense. If the characters think that, they sure as hell don't say it on screen, which is a problem for me, because I'm not fond of movies where things out of the ordinary happen, but no one acknowledges them, or they seem to pretend it's not happening. So that happens a lot. Literally days will pass, and this pool of blood remains fresh. That seems to me like something you would note, yet no one does. They do notice it though, but from that point on, they just go about their business. This pool of blood always seems to be self-renewing. They shrug and move on. It is maddening to watch. Now, the outside of the Abbey is well kept and it looks gorgeous. On the inside, it is filled with cobwebs and it is dark, it is dank, it is in such a state of disrepair. Now, keep in mind, it's obviously a sound studio, but within the world of the movie, why is no one commenting on this? Father Burke, Sister Irene, Frenchie, the people in the movie don't seem to quite notice this. It makes no sense. All I'm asking is that characters in this movie acknowledge the strangeness of their surroundings. I'm not saying necessarily that they can do anything about it, but acknowledge something is fucking weird. Yet, in this entire movie, it doesn't happen. No matter how strange or how odd things get, no one seems to really notice it. And they don't talk to each other and go, hey, I just witnessed whatever. This is really weird. Maybe we should get the fuck out of here. It never happens. And it's frustrating because, once again, it tells me that this movie is not about people. People would not respond in the fashion that these characters do. And it brings up Sister Death, which I reviewed last week. Check it out. because that movie is about a human. Which is to say, when weird things happen, she responds to them. The other people in the story don't. Why? Because they already know this shit is happening. They are by no means surprised by it. Therefore, they pretend it's not. The narrative establishes that. So it doesn't bother me when similar things happen in Sister Death. And here it does. And it's really, as I said, frustrating. The Nun is a movie in James Wan's Conjuring universe, which is to say that it's a spin-off of The Conjuring. Like Annabelle. The movie opens on two nuns bickering in a corridor next to an open door with a plaque above it which says something that is translated to "God ends here," which seems taken from The Sentinel. You know, the movie where an apartment building holds the literal gates to hell. In any case, some entity is being held in this abbey, and it is free, and it is killing these nuns. And in fact, it takes one of the two nuns that are debating, and the other one runs away. The entity can't just leave. Okay, why not use the nun you've already taken? The movie establishes that, once again, there were two nuns. One ran, the demon took the other. Why not use her body to, I don't know, leave? Now, keep in mind, there could be reasons why that doesn't happen. But my point is, the movie does not tell you. I'm not fond of filling in the blanks for movies, which is to say, when you have shortcomings in the script, as a viewer, I try to explain them away. I'm not fond of that. So if something happens, I want it told to me why that something is happening. I don't want to speculate. So why this entity didn't just take the first nun and leave, which seems to be its goal, I have no idea. But in any case, the other nun runs away and hangs herself. And I should mention that supposedly prayer is the only thing that's stopping this entity from leaving. This also makes no sense. Why is that? Well, because apparently these two nuns are the only members of this order left. So this demon has been knocking off nuns for the longest time, apparently. It's not shown, but it is strongly implied. So, how well does prayer really work? Once again, you're left to fill in the blanks that the script isn't telling you. If this were a better written movie, I could roll with that. But it's not. And again, it is irritating because it either insults your intelligence or thinks you're going to do the work for the scriptwriter. And if I were getting a cut, I wouldn't mind that, to be totally honest. But seeing that I'm not, the Vatican dispatches Father Burke to the Abbey. Off the top of my head, I don't recall why they did that. I think they may have gotten word that a nun killed herself. I'm actually a little confused about it in hindsight. In any case, Father Burke heads to the Abbey, picks up Sister Irene, who tells him that she has these dreams in which something says Mary will show her the way, which is paid off in what I think of as a homage to Raiders of the Lost Ark. which is really interesting, though unfortunately there is not a lot interesting about this movie. Their narrative establishes that Father Burke attempted an exorcism on a young boy, and the child eventually died, I think a day or two after. This weighs on Father Burke, and it's something that the demon within the abbey uses to taunt him. This is interesting because the entity doesn't seem to do this to any of the other characters, which is to say, he doesn't do it to Sister Irene, and he doesn't do it to Frenchie. Why not? It's inconsistent, in other words. The demon will play on Father Burke's fears and the perception of failure that he carries with him, but it doesn't do it to anyone else. A huge issue for me in any movie is consistency. Be consistent. If your entity is going to play on fears, have it play on fears. Everyone's fears. Make that the entity's thing. That's what it does. It brings out your greatest fear. Not this one. As I said, it's inconsistent. And inconsistency bothers me. The Nun is not a bad movie. It's well shot. It's well acted. It is attractive to look at. But it is also not particularly challenging. As I said earlier, if you're new to horror movies, The Nun is not a bad first or second horror movie. It's got scares, most of them not earned, but they're there. And it's not unwatchable. But the thing is, it has very weak characterization, it is cliched, it is nothing you haven't seen before if you watch horror movies. And in fact, you'll probably find it watchable but boring. From the perspective of someone who watches horror movies often, it is not scary, it is not really fun, it is taken way seriously, but it doesn't warrant that seriousness. So what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.